Hi, good afternoon. This is Thursday, May 3rd, and I want to thank everyone for joining us for another installation of Ask a Candidate Question. So, as usual, if there are any questions that anybody has, please feel free to type or send messages, and I will get to every single one that I can. So as I've mentioned, I think every episode before, we do this every single week, every Thursday, and it's a great opportunity for me to get to know what's on the minds of people in the district, but also outside of the district to kind of make sure that we're focusing on the right things. I do have what I've heard. I do know what I've heard and what I've learned from talking to people, but also want to make sure that that is in line with what some of the primary concerns that other people have. So again, if there are any questions, please do not hesitate. Just type in the box that you'll see over there in the lower part of your screen, and I'll give you a shout out and get to that question. So we've talked about a lot of things in the past. We've talked about right to work. We've talked about veterans. We've talked about the race. So this week, I thought I would not to go for any easy questions. We're not going anything that we've talked about. Try not to do anything we've talked about too much before. So let's talk about race. This is something that is extremely prevalent, and we have a major issue with, not race, but racial inequality in St. Louis and in Missouri. So just to let you know my mindset on why I want to do this and why I want to talk about these things, because I think that whenever we elect an official, at whatever level, at local, city, state, or federal, that they shouldn't just talk about the issues that are easy or that everyone's kind of in agreement on, like schools are good, but talk about the things that are hard. And even when I don't know all the answers, that's okay. That's my job. That's what I want to be. My job is to take on the things that are really difficult that other people don't want to talk about. So that's why I'd like to talk about racial inequality this time. So it is personal for me, not only because I'm from St. Louis and I've seen what has happened here throughout my entire life. When Ferguson was going on, I was actually in Afghanistan, my second deployment, and so I was getting a lot of questions about, hey, Mark, is that your city? What's going on? What's going on in your city? Why is this happening in St. Louis? And you know, the initial reaction is one of you kind of want to put your head in your hands and say, my God, what's happening to my city? And it was initially a little bit awkward to try to say, hey, this isn't what we are, this isn't who we are, but it's really difficult to do that whenever there are armored vehicles. The ones that the police were using are called MAT-Vs. And so just to let you know, that is a vehicle that I was in Afghanistan in my first tour there in 2010 to 11. So if you don't know what it looks like, it's a four-wheeled vehicle. Basically looks like a Jeep Wrangler on all the steroids in the world. So if Bane from Batman could design a vehicle, that's what it would be. But it's not designed to fit someone his size, because I'm 6'3" and I had a hard time fitting in there. But what it is it's meant to repel mines or repel IEDs, which are improvised explosive devices. So those are typically artillery shells or mortar shells or bombs that are wired. And so what they do is they put them on the side of the road and they explode with the hope of disabling or hurting service members. So that's in Iraq and Afghanistan. My point is, that's in Iraq and Afghanistan. But those are things that the St. Louis City and County Police Department were utilizing in Ferguson and have since toned down a bit since then, but it's still there. And I know how I would react if I saw a MAT-V or an armored military vehicle rolling down my street. I'd be furious, and I would wonder, what the hell are you doing here? Get out. So there's one place for those type of vehicles, and that's in a war zone, not here, period. So with that, with racial inequality, my family is mixed. So I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but my family is mixed. I have a sister-in-law who is African American, and that's one of the reasons why this is so personal. It's not just because this is in my city, but because it is them, and they're my nieces and nephews, and so that is one of the reasons why this is such a big issue for me. So when I talk about race, or when we talk about race, it's not just race, it's racial inequality. And with racial inequality, oftentimes comes economic inequality. And the two are not always exclusive to each other, but they often do go hand in hand. And that is not to say there's not economic inequality with other people with different backgrounds or races or genders. There is. Obviously, I'll just say what's apparent. White males, we have the least amount of concern with that. Now, that is not to say that there are not economic inequalities that go on everywhere, but it does side with some races more than others, and some genders more than others, and some sexual backgrounds more than others. And so racial inequality in St. Louis is a huge issue. What's commonly known as the Del Mar Divide is real. So whenever I'm, say, driving to the office, or I'm driving anywhere in St. Louis, if I see somebody pulled over, I will look. not to do rubbernecking and cause an accident, but to see what is it? Is this person white or black? And when they are black, I don't know what the issue was, but I know I get a sense that they might be at a disadvantage. And so to be very, very clear, I'm not placating anything. This is not anti-police. One of my closest friends is a St. Louis County police officer. This is just something that is here and is something inside of us, and that's the frightening thing. And I think if we all took an honest and introspective look at who we are and what we are, I think I've been guilty of it. And I think if we're all honest with ourselves, we probably have been too. In some form of prejudice, some sort of putting an inequality or putting a lesser than on somebody else, and just because that's what's in our head. But the good part is it's learned, and it's not something that we're born with. We're not born with thinking that other people are lesser equal. It's something that it's learned. It's done through media. It's done through time. But the good part about that is that we can change. And so I think the first thing that we can do with racial inequality is say that it does exist. It's not imagined. It's not fake. It is real. And so that's the first thing that I think we should do, and that it is prevalent here in the city. I do know my district. I know that it is predominantly white. That's okay. But I also don't want to run away from that issue because it is a predominantly white district, which isn't bad. I'm not saying it's good or bad, it just is. So even though it might not be on the top concerns of people in the district, it is very, very important to me because it's personal and it's also my city. So that's the first thing I think we can do is just admit that it is something and then start to move on from there. The next thing is, what do we do? How do we react? Well, I think what's on us, every single individual, whether you're running for office, whether you're a parent, a brother, a sister, a coworker, is to admit it, to acknowledge it, but then also whenever we do see it, whenever we do hear it, whenever we are made aware of it, to speak out against it. And so the worst thing we can do is ignore it and say, well, this is just too inconvenient, too complex, too much for me to handle right now. And quite frankly, my life is okay and it's good, so I'll just keep heading this way. I do want to tackle it. I don't have the answers. I don't know if I ever will, but I can sure try and I can sure listen and say, hey, look, this is a thing. Now what do we do? So part of that is breaking up the belief or the mantra that if you are pro Black Lives Matter, you're anti-police, or if you do support the police, you are anti-Black Lives Matter or anything of the sort. That's not true. I don't subscribe to either of those. I think that I can support the police and also support minorities and know that there is disenfranchisement, that there is inequality that does exist, and that sometimes people get arrested that shouldn't be arrested. And so when we look at the shootings that have happened in St. Louis, the shootings and stabbings, my God, it is truly heartbreaking. And this kind of dovetails into violence into guns, which we'll get to in a little bit. But it is real and it is prevalent in this city. It does happen in schools. I was in a school district, Lindbergh, that did have desegregation. It's easy to see, to look in a cafeteria, and I think there's also a book or a paper that's called Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together? So just to know that it's there, it's one thing. I think NPR or This American Life did a great study on this, and it found that schools that were actually desegregated and went through that actually performed better academically. And so it wasn't just a benefit for the students that were from urban areas or who would not normally be attending that county school, but also for the students that were there. Because if we always live in our little vacuums, our little worlds, it's very, very easy to forget and to just kind of have horse blinders on and say, this doesn't affect us, this doesn't impact me, when it really does. It impacts society. It also came to kind of a boiling head at the University of Missouri, Columbia, Mizzou, my alma mater. So several years ago, I'm sure people remember what was going on there. There were a lot of staff and administration changes. And some of the things that Mizzou is doing and continues to do is bring in more minority professors, which on the surface is a great thing. But I think we should just scratch a little bit below the surface and ask why and what is the real problem. So I would say some of the real issues are not why were there not more minority professors at Mizzou, but why are there not more minority professors? And so if we ask that question, we can follow the rabbit hole a little bit further. Well, maybe because some people weren't able to get to a PhD level in a university. And so if you go beyond that, okay, well, why? And then, well, maybe some people weren't able to attend a university, like for a bachelor's degree. Okay, why? And we follow this all the way back, and then we can start to see the racial and oftentimes intertwined with that economic inequality that does exist. So my concern with just adding more minority professors to Mizzou is not that more are being added on. It's that it might be coming from another university. So the overall problem still exists, that there are not enough. And so when we go through that, we have to look at the kind of the root causes, and it's plural. There's never one singular smoking gun. But why are more minorities not able to go to that level of college, of university, or become professors? And so if we can kind of, I don't want to say attack, if we can start to address and mitigate those systemic issues, I think in time we're going to be able to address get to more to a place where there are more minority professors at large. The issue with that is it's not a sexy response. What's easier for the University of Missouri, or Mizzou, or any other university to do is say, hey, we don't have enough, let's just bring more on. And that's a very quick fix, a temporary quick fix to a very real and ongoing issue. There have been some questions, I think. I just want to make sure that I'm not missing any in case someone is typing, so bear with me. Sometimes I don't get to see everything in time. Don't see any just yet. Okay, cool. So anyway, if we can actually address the academic and economic inequalities that are there, I think we can actually start to get to the heart of this issue. It's not about people attending schools that would not be able to attend anyway or did not meet the criteria. It's about how can we ensure that everyone has the same economic and academic opportunities that, honestly, that I had. And so that I still have. And so, as I've said before, I just don't think you should join the military to get a great education. One of the great things about the Army, and I think the military as a whole, is that you are brought in with people from all different walks of life, all different colors, all different backgrounds, all different races, all different religions, everything. And that is absolutely fantastic. In that sense, it's actually one of the great equalizing forces and entities, I think, in the nation, because it doesn't care, the military doesn't care if you are X, Y, or Z. The only question they have is, can you do this job? So whenever I attended basic training at Fort Benning, Georgia, my bunkmate, I was on the top, and there were 32 bunks in my bay, in my Army bay, and the soldier I was above was I think a 17 or 18-year-old kid who was adopted, who had a GED. And then there was, on the bunk next to me, was another young guy who had a GED, I think from New York. And honestly, I just haven't been around people who had GEDs, because whenever you do go to a certain high school, and I did go to Limerick, which is a very, very good high school and a great school district, or when you do go to the University of Missouri, or whether it's a public or private university, you kind of get these little micro ecosystems where you think everyone has this. Everyone has equal access to this because that's all year round, and it's not true. And whenever I went to GW, I think somebody made a comment like, well, people can go here, and I wanted to say, hey, look, this is an expensive private school that I'm only able to attend because of the GI Bill. But not everyone is getting their master's, and so, but what can we do to encourage people to ensure that everyone has equal access to these type of things? So I don't have any answers, unfortunately, but I think what I can do is listen. And what I can do is say that there is racial inequality, and if that makes some people uncomfortable, I really do understand. But I really do think that's the first step. And I understand that sometimes that might seem to be a luxury, that with the day-to-day issues that everyone has, with paying bills, with making sure everyone is, if they're sick, they're taken care of, getting to work on time, school events, kids events, I do understand. But also to make time to understand that there is economic and racial inequality in this city, in this state, in this nation. Let's admit it, let's give it a name, and then let's start to work towards towards these solutions. That also carries on to the office that I'm running for. I know, and this might seem a little strange, I know I am a white man who's running. I can't change that, but what I can do is use what I do have and use some of the opportunities that I have been afforded, because I've been very, very fortunate, but also because I am a male, and I am white, and it's not good or bad, it just is. So in the position that I have running for United States Congress, to help facilitate conversations, dialogue, but also to address some of the systemic and ongoing issues that do exist. Bottom line, if I could kind of wrap this up in a package, is that when I get pulled over by the police, I know nothing's going to happen. I know I'm not going to be treated poorly. I've never had a fear in my life. If I get pulled over something I've done, say speeding, or I rolled a stop sign, which I have done, a St. Louis stop, I know that nothing's going to happen. And that is a privilege. And it's one that I didn't ask for. It's one that I just have. And so it's not the fact that I'm in the military. It's not the fact that I'm from St. Louis. It's just I'm white and I'm a male. And I know that's that's uncomfortable, but I think that is the reality of it. And so what can we do? What training, if that's the answer, I think it's part of it, but what things can we do as a society to start to move beyond this? We've made a lot of great strides, but I don't think we can rest on those laurels. And you'll forgive me if I get a little bit emotional on this. One of the people I look to is Bobby Kennedy. He went to places where no one else was going to in 1967 and 68. He went to rural areas, he went to urban areas, he went to Native American areas, and he said, this is real. And he often did it without cameras, without press, without newspapers or anything like that. He went because no one else was going, and he went because he was doing right because it is right. And so that's someone that I look to. What can I do better, not only as a candidate, but as a person, to hear people that are not being heard, to understand people that feel that they are not understood, and understand that there are real inequalities here. And that also includes different parts of the district. So I spent 5 years in Fenton, Missouri, which is just outside of Arnold in Jefferson County, so the southeast part of this district. There are economic inequalities there as well. And so this is not a race-specific thing, but as uncomfortable as this dialogue might be, or for those of you watching and listening, I really do think it's the first step. And if we do that, we can start to move forward. There is nothing to be afraid of. There are not inherent differences in us. There is so much more that connects and unites us if we can just get past and move past these things. And really part of that is dialogue, but then it is action. It is not just talking about it, it's then the so what. And the so what is we move, we acknowledge it, we give it a name, and we start moving towards progress so that in time, I would love for it to be tomorrow, but in time that there is true equality here and that there is no difference. There's no connection between racial and economic inequality or educational inequality or any other kind of inequality. It's not a dream. It's not a pie-in-the-sky idea. It's something that I really do think we can do. With that, I do hope you'll join me in working towards this. If there are events that I am unaware of, please do let me know. Send me an email or type on Facebook or Twitter. Hey, Mark, there's something coming up I think it'd be great if you could go to. I'll go. Even if it's outside this district, this isn't about me. This is what can we do together? What can we do in this city? What can we do in this district? And what can we do in the state? We are the show me state, but I think in this, I would love to become the show you state. And we'll show the other 49 states what we can do together when we do identify an issue and we start to move towards progress. So thank you all very much who have tuned in. If I did not see your questions, I do apologize. I will try to get to those. But I hope everyone's staying dry on this kind of rainy, dreary Thursday. But as my mom would always say, the farmers need the rain. So with that, I hope everyone has a glorious Thursday. I do look forward to seeing those who can make it tonight to the Kirkwood Moms Demand Action. It's going to be a great event. And as we all, again, get together and work towards ending gun violence, not just in the city, not just in the state, but in the nation. So have a great Thursday, and I will see you here, same bat time, same bat channel. Thanks a lot.